Okay, we're going to start something new today, in that I want to make a few changes to our assembly draft files. And in order to do that, we need to start by creating a new draft folder. That's going to seem like it's a pain in the rear end right now, but eventually you'll see that it's going to save us a lot of time and effort. So I'm just going to open up my ANSI draft part. Actually, maybe just open up our existing template drawing, and there's a template. Just say open. It has all of our files on it. So what I want to do is actually select this entire piece right here. Oops, didn't get it. I think I messed up just a little bit. Let me close that one. I'm going to open up I'm just going to open up one of my part files here. I'll bring up part 1 because I messed with the other one, that's why it didn't work. I'm just going to do a file, save as. It's a draft, so we're going to call it, I'll overwrite my old one, say template. Yes, I'll overwrite it. So now, as soon as it comes up and says template, I want to come in here and just erase this information here. Yes. So this all shows no reference, whatnot. Now, what I want to do is actually take my selection tool, select everything, and do a Control-C. Okay? And if I right-click down on this tab, I just right-click and say Sheet Setup. You can see that I have backgrounds. This has the old piece on it for the A, and what I want to do is go to View up here on the top. I gotta cancel this first. Go to View, select Background, and you'll notice down at the bottom it comes up with these sheets. I want to select my A sheet, and I'm going to take and select everything there and just delete it. Now I'm just going to do a right click, or just do a Control V actually, and what it's going to do is paste in my new title block, which is what I created. So every time we create a sheet, we have our custom title block on this A sheet. And we're going to make some minor changes to this. I'm going to select this, hold down my Control key, and select all of the callouts that we had. Do a Control-C. Actually, before we do that, let's actually make some more adjustments on here. Taking this out, so we'll get all of our work done at once here. That's good. I need some text right here that's just going to say of. Take our selection tool and just move that up here. So this will be sheets. Say one of however many we have. If we go to our callout, we're going to hit our callout. Active sheet will be sheet scale. And hit OK. We're going to place that right here. Whoops, just one time. We'll do another callout, which is going to be for the active sheet. It will be the sheet number. That'll go right here. And then one more callout will be from the active document, the number of sheets. Hit OK, and we're going to place that right there. So right now we just have sheet 1 of 1. Just kind of move these around so they're kind of centered. And looks good. Now what we're going to do is select all of these. Get these that are back to back. Do a Control X. And then we're going to turn off the background viewing. Take out all of these pieces. And just do a sheet setup here. Delete this whole thing, and it just leaves me with the sheet. This is what we just put in there. So now if I do a Control V, there's all the information that I just copied and pasted from my references. So these are editable. When we get ready to do some work, I can move some things around, adjust the size, and we'll do a file, save. Now, one other thing I'd like to do is kind of personalize my title block. So if I right click and say, well, we'll leave this the way it is, but yeah, we can actually do it on the sheet setup. Let's go to the sheet setup, and that's all set. Go to my background again and select sheet A. What I want to do is adjust this, and I like to put a graphic in here. So if I go back to my home sketching menu, I can put a graphic right here. So I'm just going to grab an image. I've actually got an image of my granddaughter in here as a JPEG somewhere. I think it's, I stuck it under the prints directory. There she is, Riley. I'll say open and OK. And now I can just resize Riley. Whoops. And you can pull her down. So it's like a little icon, or you can have a logo. Anything you want you can put into your title block. This kind of customizes it. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it over so it kind of centers it a little bit more. Same here. And same here. Okay. If I go back to MET 121 now, you'll see that that template is already set up. And if I go to sheet A, and I'm going to say save defaults. So it's always, whenever I create a new sheet, this is what it's going to come up as. So we'll do a file save. Now let's do a file, save as, and we're going to call this one engine parts. I'd already had one in there, so I just created a new one. So now what do we need to do? We're going to go to our, turn off the background, and we're going to create, we're going to rename this sheet. We're going to call it part 1. Now watch what happens if I right click and say insert. It actually creates another sheet here. I'm going to rename this one as part 2. And then I'll right click and say insert. Right click, rename. We'll call this one part 3. We're going to do this for every part all the way down through. So I'm going to go back to part 1 and I'm going to open up my part 1 drawing, my draft. And I'm going to take my selection tool from the home menu and I'm going to select everything that's part of that drawing that's not already in my title block. Do a Control C, We'll switch our windows back to our engine parts and do a Control V. And you notice nothing happened down here. I think I just need to do a save. And then it updates our parts. Now, the first one works out great. Part 2, when we go into this one, is going to be a little different. We're going to need to open up Part 2. There's our post. We're going to select Part 2, do a Control C for copy, go back to our engine parts, do a Control V, and File, Save. Oops. I guess I got to post these in each one, so I'm going to just step 3 here. Select each of these. We can do this. You can have them all on there at the same time and do them all at once. We'll do a Control. Did I get them every one of them? Yep. Control C. Go to Part 2. Control V. Go to Part 3. Control V. So just paste them on there. You notice this still says base plate. So what we need to do is double click this and change it to from R1 to R2, and it automatically will pick it up. Now why is that? We actually click our call out now. What you'll see in the call out button is we have 2 parts attached. So there's R1, there's R2. In other words, it's just reference files in order that they're placed in here. So it's important to keep track of what number you have on there. So I'm just going to identify this one. Each of these you should just have to double click and change it to the next R2. This will change the date that it was created. Any changes in your notes, even though there's probably going to be the same thing, you want to make sure that you change it to this one. So this should automatically change the weight by just going to R2. This will change the material if it's anything different, which it is. And in this case, we want to select that, maybe make it like 0.7, and then move it over a little bit so we can adjust these things per sheet. You'll notice that there's that one still says Part 1. We'll double click, just change it to, it'll change our file name. Now the stuff that has to do with the active sheet we don't need to mess with because it's not attached to a reference file. Now if I go back to just right click down here and say set sheet scale, if I select this, it's going to ask me to identify a part, which I'll identify here, and then hit the check mark box. If the scale was any different, it would change it here, and we'll see that a little further on. Let's go to Part 3, and we're going to go ahead and open up Part 3, which is our block. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to select the whole piece, Control C, go back to our engine parts, do a Control V, it's going to place it right in there. Again, we just need to double click now. We're going to change this to R3. So it's a little bit of brainless work, but I think in the long run, as we start putting these things more together, we'll be able to do a much better job exporting our final project. I'm going to do one more sheet just to show you how the scaling works. So let's just right click and say insert. I'm going to call this one rename it and call it part 4. For now, I think I'm going to rename that later. If we open up, what I want to do is open up the exhaust pipe, because this one is scaled at 4:1. So open this up. I'm going to select everything. Go back to the engine parts. I'm going to rename this part 6. Is that what it was? Yep. So this will be the exhaust pipe. We do a Control V. There's our exhaust pipe, shows up here. I'm going to go back and get my, again, I'd probably do this all at once, but just I'm going to keep it to 3 or 4 sheets to get you started, so that do a Control C, go to part 6, do a Control V. So it's picking up that main bearing. Again, we'll just double click this, change it to R4, exhaust pipe. We do that for all of them. Now the thing I want to show you is the scale. And to change the scale, this is actually 4:1. It still picks up the paper, so if I just right click here and say set sheet scale, there's this option here, set sheet scale to drawing view scale. I'm just going to click that. It says identify a part. I just left click here. You'll notice this changes to 4:1. Hit the check mark box and it will update everything. The last thing I want to show you in this video is reordering the parts. Right now I have my parts all set up, 1, 2, 3, and then I got 6. If I want to take part 2 and move it down and say OK, then suddenly this one becomes sheet 3 of 4, this one becomes sheet 4 of 4. So it's possible we can jumble these all up, put them in any order we want to, and then at the end when we're ready to produce our project, we can actually produce each sheet in the order that it's supposed to be and have it renumber without having to go in and edit those files out. So just right click, reorder. I'll take part 2, move it back up, hit OK, and it automatically will renumber the sheets. So this is kind of important. So we've got part 1, part 2, part 3, part 6, all in place now. And when we get our assembly together and we do our exploded views, we can put them all in this same engine parts draft file, so that when we're ready to print out our portfolio, we can do it all in one step. So that is what we will be doing to start the week, and then we'll be putting some more parts together, which I'll put a video together for shortly.